Hey everyone, let's go on a field trip. Today, we are going to visit a bee farm.
Hi, I'm Annie.
I'm Shaylin.
I'm Chris, and today we're visiting a bee farm.
Today we'll be taking a field trip to a honeybee farm. But first, we're going to read a book called The Honeybee Man by Layla Nargi and Kristen Brooker. The Honeybee Man by Layla Nargi and Kristen Brooker. One quiet July dawn, Fred rolls out of bed and into his slippers. He greets two members of his enormous family. "Good morning, Copper," he calls to his dog, still curled up on the rug. "Good morning, Cat," he calls to his cat named Cat, who she stretches in a pool of sunlight. Fred shuffles downstairs to the kitchen and fixes a cup of tea. He takes his teacup in one hand and creaks back upstairs. Then up another flight of stairs. Climbing the ladder, he pushes open a hatch and pulls himself up onto the roof. Around is quiet Brooklyn. Brownstones and linden trees, a tall clock tower, and bridges in the distance. Near the edge of the roof is another tiny city. It has 3 houses, each with 2 white stories and a red story. Inside, thousands of tiny rooms made of wax. From the outside, the tiny city also seems quiet. Fred inhales the smell of a summer city morning. Maple leaves and gasoline and the river and dust. He turns to the tiny city and inhales its smaller, sweeter smell, a little like caramel, a little like ripe peaches. To the first little house, Fred calls, "Good morning, Queen Moab." To the other 2 houses, Fred calls, "Good morning, Queen Nefertiti. Good morning, Queen Boadicea." Then Fred greets the rest of his family, which has more members than he can count. "Good morning, bees, my darlings." Inside their house, the 3 queen bees and their thousands of bee daughters don't answer. But Fred knows that they are busy. The queens are laying eggs, some workers are building wax rooms, some are feeding babies, some are making the hive tidy. Others get ready to forage for flowers abloom all over Brooklyn. Fred closes his eyes and lets his mind wander. Will Queen Mab's daughters find mint flowers as they did last year? Will Queen Boadicia's honey be dark like molasses or light and clear like amber? As he thinks about honey, Fred's mouth begins to water. I can't wait to find out. Fred pictures the park at the end of his block. He imagines his bees moving from clover to clover, flying over them low and slow with their see-through wings, which flap and also twist like propellers. Fred wishes he could fly there with them, with the wind rushing over his back. Fred opens his eyes and the hives are alive, humming, with a low hum as low as a whisper. Fred hums back. Tell me what it's like to fly through the world. Zzz, hum the bees. Fred, this sounds like an answer. If only you could understand. Young bees on their first flights circle in the air. There, my girls, don't be afraid, Fred says in a soothing voice. As he speaks, the young bees seem to pluck up their courage. On the streets below, trucks rumble and babies wail in their strollers. Inch by inch, the young bees shimmy past the edge of their city. It is easy for Fred to recognize the older bees who are used to moving between their small world and the giant world of people. They zip out of the hives and throw themselves into the air, embracing it with their wings. A few land on Fred's arms. "Hello, Fred," they seem to say. "Hello, girls. Have a nice day. Now off you go." Fred gives them a flick with a finger, and away they zzz. Fred watches his bees fly into the backyard garden and other gardens all on the block. He sees the bees dive into sweet pea and squash flowers. If he were closer, he could see them using their tube-like tongues to drink in flower nectar, which they store in honey sacs inside their bellies. Then it's off to the next pea plant, to the next sage flower, in the next backyard, and maybe, if Fred is lucky, to blooming blueberry bushes somewhere across town. When the bees return to their hives, Fred notices that they are flying slowly, heavy now with nectar. Inside, Fred knows that they're performing waggle dances to tell the others where the best flowers grow. He knows that sister bees are taking all the nectar they're storing into tiny wax rooms. He knows that the others are fanning their wings to evaporate the water from the nectar so it will turn into honey. "How tirelessly you are," he sighs, wishing he could be as strong and as free as the bees. One afternoon at the end of August, Fred climbs up again to his roof. He is wearing his black rubber rain boots, his white head veil, and has a scratch on his arm from Cat the cat, who did not want to be woken this morning. He makes an announcement to the bees. "Sweeties, I've come for the honey." And then he makes a plea. Fred puffs a cloud of smoke into the house, and the bees burrow deep down inside. From the very top floor, Fred lifts up the honeycombs. He packs it into a bucket and says, "Thank you for the honey, bees." Zzz. Fred hauls the bucket down to the ladder and into the house, where he banishes Copper, the honey-loving dog, to the kitchen. Fred sets the frame of honeycomb over a plastic tank and slices off the wax caps, and the honey begins to flow. He places the honeycomb in a spinning machine, which squeezes every last drip of honey out of it. He pours the honey into jars. Then he sticks a label on the jar: "Fred's Brooklyn Honey, made by tireless Brooklyn bees." In this late afternoon, Fred sits on the stoop, enjoying a cool end of summer breeze. When his neighbors come out to chat, Fred gives them each a jar of honey. One neighbor asks, "Where did all this honey come from?" And Fred says in a humming sort of whisper, "From the sweet pea flowers in your backyard, from the flowers in the linden trees shading our block, and maybe, if we are lucky, from sour sweet blueberry bushes somewhere across town." Up on Fred's roof, the bees are huddled back in their own city, waiting for the rays of tomorrow's sun to call them up and away over Brooklyn. Their wings are tattered from flying, and the nip of autumn is in the air, Soon it will be time to rest. Down the stoop, Fred opens a jar of honey. The honey glistens and shimmers in the last sunlight, and Fred licks his finger. Or Fred sticks in a finger. It is sweet like linden flower, it is sharp like rosemary, and it's ever so slightly sour. Ah, says Fred, absorbing the happy flavors. Blueberries. The end. Let's go see Shaylin and Chris at the bee farm.
Do you know what a bee is? A bee is an insect that has wings and a stinger. Here, I'll show you a picture of a bee. This bee is called a honeybee. Do you know what bees' homes are called? A bee lives in a beehive. Here's a picture. Let's think about this. Do you think bees get cold in the winter? They do. They need something to help warm them up, just like we do.
This for, Keith. So we use this and we put it around the side of the boxes to make sure that the hives stay nice and warm in the winter. Okay, so today we're visiting a honeybee farm. Do you know what honeybees do? So what honeybees do is they come from their hive or their home and they come into areas like this and they get pollen or a yellow powder from flowers and plants and they bring it to other flowers and plants to help them grow. After the bees pollinate or take the yellow powder from flower to flower, they collect nectar, a sugary drink for the honeybees so they can take it back home to make honey.
There are 3 types of bees. There's a worker bee, a queen bee, and a drone bee, and we're going to tell you what they do. One bee in charge of the whole hive or home. This bee is called the queen bee. Okay. So the queen bee makes sure all the other bees are doing their job. Another job the queen bee has is helping to make other bees for the hive or home.
So remember when we talked about the bees carrying the pollen? Wait, what's the pollen again? Right, thanks for reminding me. That yellow powder that they take from the flowers. Those bees are called the worker bees, and they are the only ones that can go from flower to flower, taking the pollen and the nectar. Wait, what's the nectar again? Good job, that sugary drink. They're the only ones that can carry the pollen and the nectar around to make sure that the honey gets made in their hive or their home.
The bee in the hive is called a drone. The drone's job is to help the queen bee make more bees. All drones are boys who don't leave the hive. Drones don't have stingers.
Have you ever had honey? Bees are in charge of making honey, especially honeybees. Here, our friend Chris is showing us a jar full of honey. This honey is freshly made by the honeybees at the bee farm.
So this is the honey that the honeybees make.
Here, our friend Chris is trying the honey that the honeybees made. Let's see if he likes it. Now, Annie and Shaylin will try the honey. Now it's time to put away the honey and go check out the bees. Are you excited to go see the bees?
Before we go visit the honeybees, we have to put on a special suit to protect myself. So before we go visit the honeybees, we have to put on the bee suit because the honeybees don't really like strangers in their home. So talking about the bee suit, this up here protects your face and neck. These protect your hands, so your hands don't get stung and we can touch the beehive. And all the rest is just connected. We just have to make sure to zipper it up.
So here's our friend Chris getting dressed in the bee suit. Like he said, this is to protect himself from the bees so the bees can't sting him or hurt him. Did you know that bees make wax?
This is a bee frame, and this is where the bees live. The frame is made of wood, and the bees can make their own wax on the frame. This is another example of the wax that the bees can make in their hives.
It's squishy.
This whole box is where a bee lives with their family. Do you remember what a bee home is called? Right, a hive. In the winter, this is where the beekeeper feeds them because the beekeeper takes their food, the honey, to eat.
So see this white stuff? That's capped honey. So what happens is the bees, they'll put honey in there and then they'll cap it to store it. It's almost like putting something in a refrigerator to store it and freeze it. That's what they do to last for the winter.
Look at how many bees there are. What's your best guess on how many bees you see? Now we're trying to look for the queen. How many queen bees are there to one hive? That's right, just one.
that red too. Oh, I found it.
That's a weird looking thing. I haven't seen one like that. So we're going to make sure that we actually see that bee. I'm going to try to see it.
Can you believe how many bees there are?
We finally found the queen.
Here's another video of the queen. Now he's putting the beehive back together so the bees can go back to normal.
We hope you had fun on our field trip.